We've been working with this F-style bottle with a front and back label. We're now going to convert this labeling machine to run this round bottle with a wrap label. We're going to continue using the same label. It's not exactly the right label for this round bottle, but it will work, and it will serve to show you how to set up the machine for a round bottle. With a round bottle, everything has to be keyed off of the wrap station. The wrap station is aligned with the edge of the conveyor so that everything has to be on the edge of the conveyor. The edge of the bottle has to be on the edge of the conveyor. So the first thing we need to do, move the spacer wheel out of the way, and we just move it all the way back just to get it out of the way while we're working with it. We're going to move this set of rails back until they are aligned. This rail is aligned with the edge of the conveyor chain. I'm going to tighten them. So I'm going to put a bottle against the back rail, another bottle against the back rail, and then I'm going to adjust these guide rails in. And I generally adjust in until they actually touch the bottle, and then I back off about 1/8 of an inch. Now, if you have bottles that are not particularly round, they're supposed to be round, but they get a little bit ovaled in the manufacturing process, you might want a little more clearance, but generally speaking, you want the guide rails as tight as you can get them without interfering with free flow of the bottles. And remember, these bottles are empty, so even it doesn't take much more than just a slight touching to interfere with the flow of an empty bottle. So these look like they're flowing through pretty well. I'm going to move the spacer wheel in. And I want to move the spacer wheel in until perhaps 1/8 of an inch is showing. This will give me sufficient contact with the bottle so that I am holding the bottles back to provide spacing, but I'm not providing so much contact that it's actually going to crush the bottle. The chain aligner is designed to center the bottle on the conveyor, but in a round bottle, we do not want to center on the conveyor. We want to center on, or we want to orient from the edge of the conveyor. So I'm just going to crank the chain aligner all the way open. So that now the bottle can pass through without hitting the chain aligner. I'm now going to back the labeling head out. I'm going to raise the top hold down belt because we do not need that. So I release the locking pin and raise it up, and it doesn't really matter where it is just as long as it's out of the way. The wrap station has a backing plate, which is back here, and it had been backed out of the way because we didn't need it for the F bottle. But now we're going to crank it in. And I have cranked it in to where the bottle is making good contact with both sides. I want it touching, but I don't want it crushing the bottle. So you may have to play around a little bit with the setting on this, a little farther in, a little farther out until you get the label going on correctly. But right now we're just barely touching. We'll use that as a starting position. We now have to adjust the discharge rails on the conveyor, and as with the infeed rails, we want this rail to be parallel with the edge of the conveyor, with the edge of the conveyor chain. And the adjustment here is not too critical. It's mainly just to keep the bottles from falling off the conveyor. It's not lining them up with anything. This back rail, we're going to adjust it in as far as we can. Which is not quite as far as we might normally do, but it's plenty good enough for just the discharge section. The height of the wrap station is okay. Sometimes you might need to lower or raise the wrap station to make sure that you're wrapping in the correct position on the bottle. I'm going to run a bottle through using the conveyor. And this bottle is actually in a little bit too far. I'm going to need to adjust the guide rails here. Now we do not have the alignment right yet because when it comes and hits the wrap station, you notice it's moving over and joggling. You want it to flow straight into the wrap station. There should be no side movement anywhere at all in the labeling process. So we want to move this rail back a little bit. That looks pretty good. Still maybe a 1/16 of an inch, but we're pretty close. Yeah. Bottle may not be square. We saw the top of the bottle hitting the wrap belt even after we'd adjusted the guide rails, and it's not hitting on the bottom. That tells us that this belt is not perfectly perpendicular to the conveyor. So I'm going to have to adjust the angle of it slightly. I'm going to turn off the conveyor. As a safety measure, I'm going to turn off the entire machine. And this belt is mounted on a pivot, so I can loosen that Allen screw, and this one, and I want to move it just a little bit. And I think that doesn't look like it moved at all, which is why I had my finger there so I could feel it move. And we will see if that was enough. So we'll turn the machine back on. So now we're going to watch it come in, we're going to look, and we're going to see if it bobbles at all. That's almost perfect. One thing to bear in mind is that in the molding process for bottles like this, if the cooling of the molds is not correct, the bottle can actually be off vertical. So you want to look at a couple different bottles. You may also want to put the bottle on a flat surface and make sure that it's perpendicular to that flat surface at 4 points around the circumference. We have adjusted the in-feed guide rails. We have adjusted the wrap belt. We have adjusted the backing plate. Now we need to adjust the labeler so that the peeler plate is aligned with the edge of the conveyor chain. And it needs a little more. We want the peeler plate as close to the bottle as possible without actually touching the bottle. So I think we are ready to run a bottle through and see what happens. We're also going to have to change the speed of the label dispensing because as the bottle rotates through the wrap station, the linear speed of the surface of the bottle is going to be more than the linear speed of the bottle itself on the conveyor. So we're going to need to adjust the labeler speed. I'm going to crank it up to about a 200% just as a trial. I generally do this by trial and error. So we have the label head set at 200% of conveyor speed. I'm going to run one bottle through. And there you can see the label perfectly wrapped on the bottle. We're still trying to get the speeds right and all the relationships right. And it's firing a little bit early. Which is causing us a very slight wrinkle here. Maybe a little hard to see. I'm going to try twisting around in the light, see if you can catch it. But there's the wrinkle. Okay, we've made a couple more adjustments to the machine that we're not showing in the video. We have moved this backing plate back slightly so that the tangent of this infeed curve is tangent with the wrap station. We've moved the peeler plate in so that the label is going to dispense right as the bottle enters between the two belts. And I'm going to run a bottle through now. And as you can see, no wrinkles at all.